Welcome back to Closing Time with Nick El-Tawil. I am, once again, Nick El-Tawil, and I'm here with my guest today, Dr. Shiven. Shiv, what's up?
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
So, Shiv, you've started such a cool new business, and you've
hmm
been such a great guy the whole time I've known you, and I want to have you on to talk about it. So, you're in concierge medicine, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So I do concierge medicine and then
Mm-hmm.
something called integrative medicine. And for people that are not familiar with integrative medicine, it's a really cool new field in some ways because it combines holistic medicine with Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is personalized and it's a whole body approach, is what I tell people.
Mm-hmm. So you're not one of those hippie doctors who tells you to like Steve Jobs' doctor who let him die from cancer. You're kind of like an in between. You'll do the good stuff from that, but you'll also use real medicine when it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's sort of the problem with integrative medicine these days, that there's a lot of people that are doing more or less unethical stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of what we're trying to change here. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a problem in all over the United States, and especially Scottsdale here. I think people are really interested in, losing pharmaceuticals and really thinking of care, how they can fix their problem without using just pills or surgeries or Western methods. So I think it works well. But like you said, it is a combination of two. It's not in lieu of Western
Right,
medicine.
right, right.
It's combining both.
Like my buddy Casey, who actually talked to you a lot,
Yeah.
by the way. He had a shoulder issue,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure you recommended surgery, right?
Absolutely, because there are times when we're not trying to pick and choose. What we're trying to use integrative medicine as is an adjunct to conventional care.
Mm-hmm.
And in certain cases, when surgery is required, it's required.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
And that was his issue. He was like trying to look for anything but surgery. And even you're telling him, like, man, you got to get surgery. But, a couple other quack doctors might be like, no, no, do this instead, do this, do this. But you're like, when something is wrong that requires surgery, you got to just do surgery.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the mindset really should be on root cause,
Mm-hmm.
because if I think about elbow pain or shoulder pain, my first question is, hey, what is the root cause here? Where
Mm-hmm.
is that pain coming from? Is it a nerve problem? Is it a bony structure problem? Is it arthritis? So there's a lot of complexity that goes into diagnosing, as you could imagine, especially with chronic pain. There's a lot of things that are at play here. So really the idea of integrative medicine is getting to the bottom of things,
Mm-hmm.
getting to understand, was it my body mechanics? Is it the stress in the environment? Is it the way that I move? Is it how I'm eating, how I'm sleeping? So all those things are very important in integrative medicine.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of doctors will just tell people what they want to hear. And yeah, they'll take your money and tell you what you want to hear, but it really should be about fixing problems.
It really should be about fixing problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another way to look at concierge medicine. So about a couple of decades ago, the idea of concierge medicine came along, which was the idea that we need to put patients in the center of their care.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite frankly, in conventional medicine and insurance-based medicine, that piece is lacking. The patient really is out in the periphery, not really the central focus of their own care.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of concierge medicine emerged as putting the patient, giving them more autonomy, but also giving your physician more autonomy so
Mm-hmm.
that you're not bound by insurance contracts, you're not bound by the big pharma. You're really working on the person that's in front of you, and that's all you're trying to, um, you're trying to work towards a better goal for the patient and also trying to understand their values here.
Mm-hmm. And for the audience, would you
hmm
mind describing concierge medicine?
So, like I said, we don't accept insurance. It's a cash pay type of practice. The idea of concierge medicine is providing really good primary care services where we're not just treating an illness, we're really going through prevention of chronic diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a lot more time for the patients. I spend about 2 hours in my first consultation. And then as needs come through, there's no quota. Hey, your 15 minutes are up and we're done talking today.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as the patient needs it, I'm there for them. If they need me a little less at some point, we're there a little less, but it really is catering to the person in front of you.
Hmm. So, in essence, you are basically this person's personal doctor.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, so you're following them around, treating all their issues that come up. What would you say the average age is for someone who takes your services on?
Well, that's interesting because so I'm an internist.
Mm-hmm.
I only see patients 18 and over. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of patients that we have that
No
are well into their.
12-year-olds doing concierge?
No, well, and you know there is pediatric concierge, but unfortunately that's not something that I can do, or because that's not my part of my training. So I don't see any patients less than 18.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it's a huge range. I
Mm-hmm.
have patients that are well into their 60s or 70s that already have some chronic health conditions that they're dealing with. And I also have 25-year-olds that are looking for preventative medicine and not just looking to get a pill. So it really is a huge range here.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So 25-year-old, they're paying for concierge services. Are they paying out of pocket? Are they like well off? Or is this something they just said, wow, I really see the value in this. I need to spend my paycheck on this.
I think people are seeing the value in it
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of money that you lose when you actually have chronic health conditions. And what we're trying to do for the 25-year-olds is really optimize them for success.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the integrative medicine component in my practice really helps that as well because what we're looking at is their gut health, their hormone health, their toxins that you have in the environment, how they are interacting in the body. So it really is a well balanced sort of care
Mm-hmm.
and not just focusing on, okay, you don't have, so the absence of disease is not necessarily the problem here. It's
Mm-hmm.
how do we optimize the human? Because I would say, when I was myself in training in
Mm-hmm.
my 20s, um, I did not have any labeled diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But I would tell you that because of the lifestyle as a physician who was in training, I was not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say that I had any medical diseases associated with me. And for me, the integrative medicine piece of it was it was sort of a self journey in
Mm-hmm.
discovering my own roots, discovering my own um, uniqueness, is what I would say, right? So when I was growing up in an Indian household, I'll tell you that when we got sick, we used to get things like turmeric and ginger and peppermint. And the funny part at that point was it was not called integrative medicine, it was just simply called medicine. So a lot of what I wanted to do was understand where this guidance was coming from my ancestors, from my grandparents. I have a very strong interest in something called Ayurveda, which is an Indian healing system.
Mm-hmm.
And the the essence of Ayurveda is that before treating somebody's disease, you need to understand them as a human. So I think that's where really what we're talking about for the younger folks, what we're trying to do is really set them for success in the future so that their 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they look a lot different than most of America, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Now, my dad is probably one of those guys you hate. He's a health insurance guy. So he's one of those guys who like looks over and says, "Okay, we can only approve this treatment. We can only approve this treatment. Blah 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 blah." And I have seen because I rely on health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I don't have great health insurance. I'm a real estate agent. I
Yep.
get whatever least expensive insurance I can, but it's super limiting. Like I go to the doctor, they can only do this for that. They can only do this for that. So I totally see the value in what you're saying to me right now, because yeah, I mean insurance pays for certain things, but there's they don't have a rhyme or reason for why they pay for those things. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. This is what's cost effective for us. This is why we'll pay for it.
The additional thing that's, and exactly what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to insurance, it's difficult. It's difficult for most people. What we do in concierge medicine, it actually help navigate that health insurance fear for people too. So,
Mm-hmm.
for the most parts, when people are uh, getting lab testing or they're getting imaging or their surgeries or medications, that's still going to go through insurance. So, what a good concierge medicine doctor should do is help the patient navigate through that really difficult system
Mm-hmm.
and really get the value from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you help people navigate that?
Well, there's certain things that obviously when you are in medicine, you know what insurance companies, how they behave, how they interact, not always in the best way or not always in a way that is beneficial for the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So you have enough experience to know, hey, what medications will go through, won't go through. And there are times when I will tell you, let's say if you're getting an MRI of your shoulder, you're probably paying more through your health insurance than you are out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And these are sort of the tricks that you learn being part of the system. And, for better or for worse, we're in the situation right now. And I'll tell you that it's hard. It's hard for anybody to go through living in America, through go through the health insurance system, and actually feel that they're being cared for.
Mm-hmm.
So we ease that burden. So I usually tell people, once you join the practice, the one thing that you'll never have to worry about is being on hold with your imaging, your labs for hours on end, trying to figure out how to get to the consultant that is right for you. So I tell people that's my problem now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'll tell you that that actually really opens people up to a care that they're not used to
Mm-hmm.
in healthcare. So the goal is to really reduce the stress,
Mm-hmm.
help them navigate through the insurance system, but also provide a level of service where people feel cared for.
Mm-hmm. It's so true because I think so much of what insurance will, approve is stuff to fix a problem you already have, but where's the ongoing maintenance to make sure you don't have those problems in the first place? We're pretty lacking on that.
That's severely lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the huge issue in integrative medicine because if I was to work with a patient on doing breath work or mind body medicine, there's not really a code in your ICD system that says this is appropriate for billing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why a lot of us that feel sort of disenfranchised from the whole system, we feel that there's a better way where we don't have to involve these people that are kind of in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and you can provide care how it's intended to be
Mm-hmm.
and how I would want to be treated from my doctor. So,
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. Now, how do you feel about like certain maybe prescriptions and stuff that can't get approved? Like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I used to get sick around the holidays, and I get a cough, go to the doctor, they give you codeine cough syrup, totally fixes the problem. You're fine. Then Lil Wayne got famous. Now they don't give out codeine cough syrup because all the kids drink lean. But the stuff they give you instead doesn't work. So I just suffer if I get sick again.
right. And, not to specifically talk about codeine, but in general, I agree with your larger point is
Mm-hmm.
that whatever is quote unquote in the formulary for the
Mm-hmm.
insurance sometimes will get covered. So now there are ways that we help patients to get medications through different coupons like Group RX, or we have newer pharmacies coming up that actually offer discounted rates for medications that your doctor feels is the right fit for you. So I, while I think this problem from the insurance world, I'm not sure if we're any close to solving that. But I will say if you work with a good physician who knows and has been through a series of these insurance denials and what we call prior authorizations, they do know some tricks here. They
Mm-hmm.
can help you out in a larger way. I did want to have another conversation though about in general when you are looking for a physician,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the concierge integrative medicine world, what are the things that you should be looking for?
What should I look for? I just know you, so I
Yeah.
just call you. Hopefully
and
that's all right.
and that's perfectly fine, but I think I wish everybody had a Dr. Shiven friend, right?
You could, if you're watching this.
That's true. That's true. So the biggest thing that I would say is understanding the credentials of the person that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
How did they get their training in integrative medicine? How did they get their training in conventional medicine? So, for people that are unaware, obviously as a physician, I did 4 years of pre-med, I did 4 years of medical school, then I did 3 years in residency um, in internal medicine. And then once I got done with my conventional allopathic medicine, I did another 2 years of fellowship in something called integrative medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So within that fellowship, I had the experience of learning from shamans, from naturopaths, from Ayurvedic practitioners, from nutritionists. It really gave me a different perspective. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up training, and actually you can get board certified in integrative medicine as well as a physician. Um, the reason why I bring this up is it's really important because I don't want people to be in a situation where they go to somebody that did a weekend course and then started doing, everything that we now know in integrative medicine, things like peptides and hormones and gut health and stem cells. So, you know, that's the part that I think is very important that people need to, as a consumer that's going to be avid in this sphere, and as somebody that's going to be interested in integrative medicine, I think it's important part as a consumer to understand where the credentials are coming from.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge point in Scottsdale too, because peptides, hormones, all that stuff you mentioned,
Hmm.
there's a ton of that in Scottsdale, but it's not really integrative medicine. It's just, hey, we're doing
Yes,
this, and you go to this doctor to get that, and then you go to your normal doctor for the other thing. But you're kind of a one-stop shop. You know it all, and you've done it all, and you see how it all plays together, and you can help balance that within one person.
absolutely. But I would addend that statement. I always tell people I don't know it all. I am a lifelong learner. I will tell you that.
I know it all. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
I guess you probably do, but
I feel like I do sometimes, and then I realize I don't.
that's why I love your confidence. But I think the biggest thing in that this experience, this journey, like I said, that started off as a self-reflection on my own health. It was the idea of openness,
Hmm.
which we are so rigid sometimes in conventional medicine. I've had several patients with the same story. My doctor recommended a cholesterol medication. I had side effects. And when I told them that, they were unwilling to listen or to understand where I was coming from. And I think there's something wrong with that. There's inherently something wrong when there's no trust built
Hmm.
within the physician and the client, right?
Hmm.
And that's really the part that's important to me. I tell people that it's possible that we work together and we don't find, quote unquote, the cure.
Hmm.
But the truth is, we're not looking for cure in integrative medicine. What we're looking for is support. We're looking for a path to wellness that's sustainable and not just a silly pill that we think is going to take away all the problems.
Hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
I did a lot of self research when I was trying to get healthy and like get in shape and lose weight. I'm sure Jensen can attest to this too, who's behind the camera. There's really not a lot that you learn from a doctor about that stuff. Like you kind of have to go out there and figure it out yourself. You
You
have to
do.
learn about calories in, calories out. You have to learn about the macros, the
Uh-huh.
carbs, the protein. So it's very interesting how limited like a traditional doctor can be for stuff like that.
By the way, this is my favorite consult to
Hmm.
do. I have a lot of patients that have tried things because a cousin recommended it, because an influencer that they saw swears by it.
Saw it on TikTok.
Saw
Doing
it
it.
on
Doing
TikTok.
it. Injecting that directly into my bloodstream.
And so in a lot of my integrative medicine consults, I'll tell you truthfully, what we're doing is actually taking these 30 supplements that patients have and then really going one by one saying, okay, so what are we taking this for? What are we taking this for? What do you think this intended purpose of this is?
Hmm.
The other thing is that there's actually herb and herb interactions that patients are not aware of.
Hmm.
And sometimes their physicians are not aware of. And that's really important because you can have even from herbs, you can have bad outcomes and you can have adverse events.
Mm-hmm.
I had a patient that was using a botanical for perimenopausal symptoms, and she ended up in liver failure
Nice.
and had to get a liver transplantation. And this was a otherwise healthy human
Mm-hmm.
that was not even on a single pharmaceutical, believe it
Mm-hmm.
or not. So I think those things are important. And then now when you mix the complexity of the 20 medications that the patient is taking, and top of that, you add the 20 supplements, now you're getting really confused.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just goes back to that point that while I find that people are navigating this sphere of wellness and this idea of how to get optimize their health, there's a lot of misinformation out there,
Mm-hmm.
and which can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Less is more sometimes.
Less is more sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's one supplement that you think people, not everybody, but most people would benefit from?
Sure. So I'm not going to name one supplement, but I'm going to name the class of supplement that I
Okay.
think is an important one, and that I think most people now.
Nicotine?
That
No.
was not going to
Should I stop taking that?
be. If we were in the 70s, maybe that's what I would have recommended. Some cocaine and nicotine.
Got that covered.
So there's this unique set of botanicals that are called adaptogens. They help with chronic fatigue. They help with the cortisol HPA axis, as we call it. And for the most part, uh, almost every individual, while everyone's has their unique set of, you know, set of characteristics as a human, but most people can benefit from something. And why do I say this? Is because, we live in a world where we have so many toxic exposures, we have stress, we have our digital devices, we're not sleeping well, we're not moving well, and even the things that seep in through our food system we are unaware of. So we have a lot of these exposures that are causing chronic inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So adaptogen just happens to be one of those class of botanicals and herbs that can help with that. Now, in those class, we have things like ashwagandha, we have things like maca root, we have things like ginseng, and the list is really endless. But that's when you really try to narrow down and understand your patient before you prescribe any of these botanicals. Now, the other important thing that I tell people is when you're working with plant medicine, it really is sometimes picking between broccoli and kale. Now, they're both inherently great,
Mm-hmm.
but which one is going to be effective for the person that's sitting in front of me? That's what we really have to work on.
Mm-hmm. Now, for adaptogens,
Hmm.
can you give us an example of one? Not one that
Sure.
everybody should take, but just an example of one, because I'm not
Sure.
100% sure what those are.
Yeah, so an example would be ashwagandha. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard
Or,
of it, yeah.
yeah, so
I don't think I've taken it.
it is a plant that has been used in Ayurveda for thousands of years. It is one that I would say is a very nice adaptogen because it doesn't get you too activated.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other adaptogens can really get you wired.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost, the opposite of being on caffeine. This one kind of gets you mellow. It helps with the stress, and it actually helps with the fatigue. I usually tell people the best way to start on ashwagandha is probably starting it at night because it can have that mild sedating effect. Obviously, be sure you consult your physicians, making sure that there's no other interaction with the medications that you're taking. I generally start people slow and we kind of go up from there on out. It helps with things like inflammation. It has great benefits for sleep. It actually has great benefits for hormone health. So it really can help with all sorts of spheres in your life. So that's why I think if I had to pick one adaptogen that really works well with most people, I would say ashwagandha.
Okay, and is ashwagandha prescription only or over the counter?
So all of botanicals and supplements are generally over the counter,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have to prescribe them. Now that said, where you buy your supplements, including ashwagandha, is really important.
Yeah, you don't want to buy them over the counter in Tijuana.
You don't want to buy, and maybe Tijuana may have good processes, but that's something we'd have to do some research and look into the
Yeah.
product. So, and I get this question a lot. Well, how do you choose a product? The first step is looking at the bottle, looking
Hmm.
at the label. I can't tell you how much information is in that label, or the lack of information is in a label for
Hmm.
you to know that this is not a good supplement and
Hmm.
this does not meet these standards, right?
Hmm.
And the other thing that I would mention is, because a lot of people think that all supplements are entirely unregulated. Now, that's not true, in the sense that if you look at early 2000s, that's when we had the FDA put on these guidelines that are called the DESHA guidelines. So
Hmm.
now we know, if I want to, let's say if I want to make a Dr. Shiven supplement, there are some testing and stringent guidelines that I have to follow through to
Hmm.
be a supplement. The problem is the regulation, in the sense that, if I put the supplement out, how am I going to know if I'm meeting all the standards
Hmm.
unless somebody complains or somebody notices that?
Hmm.
And the FDA themselves will actually admit that they get a lot of complaints on these supplements, but the needle hasn't moved. So um, I recommend, obviously, looking at third party testing, which is the best way to actually look at the testing that your supplement has gone through. So
Hmm.
things like NSF label or USP label or consumer lab label might be helpful for you to know what sort of testing went on when they
Hmm.
created that supplement. Otherwise, you might be in this problem where, let's say, if you take either something with a supplement that has vitamin D, but it's saying it has 1,000 units, but you don't know what the actual content is, because that's the error that you could have. You could have way more than what the pill bottle says, or you can have a lot less. And on top of that, you can have things like heavy metal toxicities,
Hmm.
because just like what's happening with the food industry, it's a very similar process that it really is, the oversight needs to be there to
Hmm.
understand and make sure that you're taking the supplement in a safe manner.
Hmm. Little different, but I know peptides are not
Sure.
FDA approved, so you do have to do third party testing for those, right?
Well, so some peptides are FDA approved.
Oh, they are
So
now.
yes. So for example, this drug Wegovy or GLPs. Now that is also a peptide, and that
Isn't
is,
that what is it called? Ozempic?
yeah,
Yeah. So that's a
exactly.
peptide?
That's a peptide.
Okay.
So there are several peptides that are FDA approved. Not all peptides that are out there that are beneficial,
Hmm.
I would say, because and truth be told, and that might be more to do with not enough research being out there, that
Hmm.
these peptides are not yet commercialized, or as I would call it, that the pharmaceutical industry has not looked into some of these peptides and done enough extensive research.
Hmm.
But in order to be a pharmaceutical and get through FDA, I mean that's no joke either.
Hmm.
So while there's a lot of things that are out there that could be beneficial, I think it's a shame to sometimes just say, "Hey, we don't have enough research to, say that these are ineffective." I
Hmm.
do think there has to be some level of oversight, and goes back to working with the right physician, talking to the right person in front of you that's credentialed to understand, that knows what side effects could be, and also it's all about informed consent.
Hmm.
In integrative medicine, we do a lot of things that are out of the box. We're
Hmm.
not just sticking to the regular pharmaceuticals. And sometimes that could be in the way of lifestyle changes, sometimes that could be in the way of botanicals or supplements. But you need to have informed consent, meaning that the person in front of you needs to understand the risks and also what level of evidence currently exists.
Hmm. I'm 100% with you. Maybe I'll change in 20 years when I'm old and I get a little more conservative. But I've been taking peptides since way before they were FDA approved. And
Sure.
that's like the one thing that stuck with me. And I attribute a lot of, how I look and how I feel to just taking peptides for the last 8 years.
Yeah, and I've had several
And
patients.
I don't take Ozempic. I take ipamorelin.
Fair enough, and I agree with you. I think a lot of my patients will be a testament similar to your story, where
Mhm.
they've found a noticeable difference in their health once
Mhm.
they've taken these peptides. So
Should we tell the people how we met?
absolutely.
So there's this service, it's called Time Left, and you can do a random dinner with, up to 8 people in one city. So I live in Phoenix, but I just saw this thing. I'm like, whatever, I might as well try it. So I tried it one night. I end up at a table with this guy and 6 girls, and like we had such the best time. I could never top that again, so I immediately said I'm never doing this again because this is the best. But Shiv and I have kept in touch since then, and he's turned out to be a great dude. So meeting random people at dinner can turn into good things.
I agree. I mean, I think that was such a fun night and a fun dinner. Um, just it's so interesting to see the human experience of having to dine with people that you have never met or don't know anything about. And what came out of it, I thought was beautiful. I mean, beautiful friendship, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad that we had that opportunity together.
Same. I used to go out by myself when I lived in New York,
Hmm.
and that was a totally normal thing. You just go out, sit at the bar, people come up and talk to you, you talk to other people, and I try and do that in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and it's just a smaller area. I mean, Phoenix is a huge city, but it's very spread out. So if you're going
Hmm.
like within certain locations, you tend to see the same people.
Hmm.
And so if I go to a bar by myself, I end up knowing someone, and then I'm not really by myself anymore. I'm kind of with people I already know. So it was super cool to have that and just meet new people that I would have never met otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And living in isolation is actually a strong determinant of your overall health. Are you familiar with the blue zones?
No,
So these are
this is not like blue
places
balls, is it? No. Okay.
that slightly different.
Slightly different.
Okay, so blue zones are these areas in the world that have people living healthy and long life.
Hmm.
And these are communities where people are living over 100 years old, and not just living these people are living healthily
Hmm.
to 100 years old, which I think makes a huge difference.
You know what? I have heard of these because Scottsdale is going to become one. Is
I,
that the news I heard?
well, I know that there's a Blue Zone project that's been ongoing.
It's a
Uh,
blue zone project. Okay, so it's
yes,
not Scottsdale is a blue zone.
not yet, not
Hmm.
yet, but we can certainly get there, you know.
Hmm.
And the reason why I brought up isolation and being having social support is one of the common themes that you see in most of these blue zones, whether it's in Italy or Greece or California or Japan. What you notice is that there is such good social support. There's family built around taking care of each other, and there's the sense of community,
Hmm.
which I think is so important uh, in somebody's overall health. I have several patients that one of the things that they complain about, especially as they're getting older, because you know after 65, the honest truth is what we'll all have is we will lose people around us, because people obviously are not going to be living forever. So, especially in that age group, what I've noticed is there's such this need for sense of community, and just going back to how we met, and just the idea of people being able to talk to each other, just talking to one another, and
Hmm.
I think that's so important, and it's an important part of being overall healthy.
That's huge.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought that up. Go outside, talk to strangers, people. It'll make you live longer.
yeah, and get some sunlight.
And get some goddamn sunlight. I have a friend who gets spray tans. He lives in
Uh-huh.
Scottsdale.
Mhm.
He lives in Scottsdale where we have sun every single day, like oppressive
Now,
sunlight.
when you say I have a
And he,
friend, is this friend you?
no, this
No.
is multiple friends. No, no, I don't do any spray tans. I go out for 20, 30 minutes a day,
You just
take
have
my shirt
flawless
off.
skin.
take my shirt off, and then I do my phone calls while I
Oh,
go
I
for a
love
walk.
it.
So that's my go-to.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Because you know, when I lived in New York, I did not get sun, so I
Uh,
was not tan at all.
yeah,
After 10 years
yeah.
of living in New York, I lost all my sun.
Oh, I lived in Chicago for 4,
Yeah, and that's the
and
same thing.
I'll tell you that we had I had read in medical books about seasonal affective disorder,
Mm-hmm.
which happens when you don't have enough sunlight,
Mm-hmm.
and I sincerely felt it
Mm-hmm.
because when that sun did not come out for 4 days in Chicago, I will tell you it was a very depressing thought. Just the idea of, man, it's been 4 days.
Only
So,
4 days? I
oh,
would go weeks without seeing sun. Damn.
yeah, and there are parts of the world, right, where
Months.
it's months.
Yeah.
So it's so important to understand how our environment actually affects us,
Mm-hmm.
um, and obviously we touched on the sun, and one of the big things is also the lack of vitamin D when you don't have
Mm-hmm.
enough sun exposure, because there's hardly any vitamin D that you can find in food groups. I mean, you have some foods that might be fortified with vitamin D, but really
It's not the
most of it,
same.
it's not the same, and
Mm-hmm.
most of your vitamin D is coming from sunlight, sun exposure. So
Mm-hmm. On that note, is there anything that's like the opposite of seasonal affective disorder? Maybe heat sickness or something? Like when it gets hot in Arizona for 4 months and you're just, by the end of it, you're just like, I need to get the fuck out.
yes, well, there's obviously heat exhaustion and heat
Heat
stroke.
exhaustion.
Yep. And the severe form of that would be a heat stroke, which people will have to get hospitalized sometimes for those things. So, that said, while we've said all good things about the sun,
There is another extreme.
there is
So
another
if
extreme.
you live in Phoenix, Scottsdale, just go away for a weekend. Reset yourself, come back. Makes your life
Absolutely,
easier.
that's where you have to sort of talk about being adequately hydrated, really thinking about the environment that you're going in, and also, I mean, one of the other things that you could do is get some IV vitamin support if
Mm-hmm.
that's especially, one thing is the sun and heat exhaustion, but there's also problems with our food chain and food supply, that we are not adequately equipped to get all the micronutrients. So one of the things that I also recommend that people can do and pursue is really looking at each of your micronutrients and seeing how you are. Where are things that you are lacking, and where are things that you are doing really well in? So, because I get a question that quite often is, can you recommend a multivitamin brand? And while I have nothing against
Flintstones.
Flintstones, well, I generally would say if you are going to take a multivitamin, at least stay away from the gummy bear, the gummy vitamins. But in general, now, not to say that there's no utility in a multivitamin. I think one thing that people can do in terms of testing is actually um, look at the levels and risk stratify yourself. Are you low in vitamin B? Are you low in vitamin D or iron or magnesium? And um, then what you do after that is, once you know your levels, you can really target, whether it's through a pill or it's through an IV or it's through a tincture, whatever the formulation that you're interested in. And what happens in that way is that you're really targeting your body's needs.
Mm-hmm. Shiv, you got anything else for us today?
Um, I think, what do you think? I think that was pretty good. That was
I
a
think
lot of
we, I
information.
think we covered a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I think just sort of in summary, I obviously I'm very passionate about what I do, and I hope that people can find value in concierge and integrative medicine. And like I said, I mean, I've seen too many bad outcomes from people trying and testing things out on their own. Um, and frankly, it's not something that, it's because of the system that we're living in that people have to do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, I think there are people, wonderful people out there that can help with health, wellness, longevity, and just as a consumer, you have to just make sure it's the right person for you.
Mm-hmm. Where can people find you and work with you? They want your services.
Sure. So I have a clinic up in North Scottsdale. If you go to my website, it's called www.drshiven.com. So
Shiven.
there we go.
drshiven.com.
You can text us, call us, and if you have any health needs, we'll be happy to help.
Dr. Shiven, everybody. I'm Nick El-Tawil. Thanks for watching.